We're over WBT right now and also WORD in Greenville, and we are counting down the moments here until Joe Biden becomes the 46th president of the United States. And we've already, all of us have been watching the various video feeds. The invocation by Reverend Leo Jeremiah O'Donovan is going on as we speak here, Brett.
Yes, we are. We're watching this invocation. We see President-elect Biden standing there on the stage alongside the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
And it will be.
And this is special coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden. I'm Bo Thompson. This is the third inauguration coverage broadcast I've been part of since I've been doing mornings here in Charlotte. I've been part of many other inauguration presentations over the years from a production standpoint. So many times I've sat in the studio, guys. I think we can all agree that this is the most interesting backdrop behind an inauguration that we've ever seen. Vince, you've been covering inaugurations for a long time as well. A lot of this today, there's no real playbook for it because an inauguration during a pandemic is something new for everybody here.
Yeah, it certainly is. We've got a number of very interesting dynamics here. One of them, as you mentioned, we've got the pandemic because this requires now social distancing. Not as many people would be allowed to come to the event. And then you have, because the event's on January 6th, enhanced security measures. So you have, for that reason, also fewer people even in the nation's capital to be able to take part in the event. The other unusual thing is we don't have a former president, outgoing president there, because President Donald Trump and Melania, they took off for Mar-a-Lago this morning, leaving by Air Force One after delivering a short message. So this is a very interesting transfer of power.
Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Live coverage right now on WBT and WORD, also over Facebook Live, facebook.com/WBT Radio. We're video, audio, and everywhere else. And we're glad you're joining us. The swearing-in ceremony happening on the Capitol West front. And right now, Lady Gaga being escorted out by military personnel, about to sing the national anthem. And this looks to be a pretty star-studded event there, Brett Winterble.
Sure does. It is Hollywood meets Washington, D.C. as Lady Gaga approaches the microphone, about to begin that national anthem. And everybody is standing with rapt attention.
One of the biggest dresses I've ever seen at an inauguration.
That is quite a dress. Quite a dress.
Indeed, it is. It is something. And what a large dove on her pin.
Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga being escorted again down the stairs, getting ready to approach the microphone, wearing a very large red dress, and looks like, well, Brett, that's a very large bird that is facing front on the otherwise black outfit.
Absolutely. A golden microphone in her hand, and really quite a spectacle in front of us.
Here's Lady Gaga, national anthem.
Stripes and bright stars through the
You're listening to live coverage here on WBT and WORD in Charlotte and Greenville. The inauguration of the 46th President of the United States, Lady Gaga, singing the national anthem. We'll have a poetry reading momentarily by Amanda Gorman and a musical performance by Jennifer Lopez between now and high noon, guys, when Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th President. Vince Coakley, what do you make of what you're seeing right now?
Well, it's certainly a very extraordinary scene. And this is, again, another reminder of what happens whenever you have this kind of transition. You have the folks who are very much favorable to the administration that's incoming from Hollywood, who are connected to those in Washington. And Lady Gaga certainly fits that category for Democrats.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brett Winterble, this has more of a look of a traditional inauguration ceremony than I thought, given the chatter ahead of this.
Yeah, indeed it does. Certainly you'd have no idea that you've got a ring of 25,000 National Guard troops out there. You've got no idea that we'd be in a pandemic in this regard.
America is
Senator Amy Klobuchar now speaking.
first to administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris. It is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right.
One point of reference as you're listening on WBT, Kamala Harris just sworn in, or just reciting the oath. Vice President Mike Pence is in the audience here.
Absolutely he is. And an interesting note, right now you'd have a President Trump and a Vice President Kamala Harris for a brief moment in time.
Just for a few moments, yes.
Thought it was interesting about the pronunciation of Kamala
Harris.
Kamala Harris. You notice there the Supreme Court justice said Kamala, and when she said her name herself, she said Kamala. I have long been told it was Kamala. Now that's been reinforced in the most official of ceremonies.
Indeed.
Jennifer Lopez is about to perform ahead of the presidential oath.
Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's own United States Marine Band.
Live coverage continues here on WBT and WORD. Right now, as I'm talking to you, Jennifer Lopez in a white outfit is being escorted down the steps of the Capitol building to the microphone where Lady Gaga performed just a few moments ago. So already Lady Gaga and now Jennifer Lopez, as Brett Winterble pointed out, this is a very Hollywood type ceremony
Indeed.
going on here.
It sure is. Absolutely. Celebrities abound of the political and entertainment field.
Jennifer Lopez fighting back tears, it appears.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking down that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that in this skyway, I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, oh, this land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, this land was made for you and me. You and me. America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood. From sea to shining sea. Una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Let's get loud. This land was made for you and me.
Beautiful medley of songs there by Jennifer Lopez, singing This Land Is Your Land, interspersed there with the Star Spangled Banner. This is quite a moving presentation we just heard there.
You're listening to live coverage of the
Well, that was great.
inauguration.
The sun is shining, and Mr. President-elect, this is the first inauguration in the history of America where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts. With that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts, to administer the presidential oath to the next President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Chief Justice Roberts getting set to administer the oath here. Obviously, Joe Biden has taken the vice presidential oath before, and now he will be sworn in as the man with the top job. WBT, WORD live coverage right now, presidential inauguration.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
And it is official. Joseph R. Biden Jr., now officially the 46th President of the United States.
And we mark this moment, 11:50. 11:50, Joe Biden sworn in as new President of the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris serving with him.
In just a few moments here, the president will have that speech that we all remember so well from each of the other presidents. His chance. Soak it in for a moment and then assume the position of the most powerful man in the free world.
Indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
And again, you're listening to live coverage here on WBT and WORD, the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, now President and Vice President, Bo Thompson, Vince Coakley, and Brett Winterble here in Charlotte and also in Greenville.
For as cold a day as it is there in Washington, it is a beautifully sunny day, and certainly hoping for a very bright future for this nation as we move from this horrifying pandemic.
A lot of people wonder what Joe Biden will say in this speech, things he will talk about. Will he make any reference to what happened 2 weeks ago, almost exactly at this time in Washington, D.C., at this same place? How much will he talk about the pandemic that is very much an issue right now? Hopefully in history, when we look back at this speech, it'll be very much a thing of the past.
Indeed.
Also, a lot of conversation, a lot of campaigning on the subject of bringing
My
the country
fellow
together.
Americans,
Will he be able to accomplish
a
that?
moment we have all been waiting for. It is now my great privilege and high honor to be the first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr.
Amy Klobuchar introducing the new President of the United States as he approaches the microphone, acknowledges the limited crowd that's allowed to be here today.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, and my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country has taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make health care secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay at bed staring at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, or rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. This is what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer Remember all those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. We'll honor them for becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch, but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Joe Biden wrapping up his inauguration speech here on WBT Charlotte, WBT FM Chester, WLNK HD2 Charlotte. It's live coverage of Inauguration Day. Bo Thompson, Brett Winterble, Vince Coakley. And what you're going to hear now as we discuss what we heard in the background, Garth Brooks is one of the performers who is getting set to offer up a musical number. Vince Coakley, your initial thoughts on what you heard there, about a 15, 20-minute speech.
Pretty much what I expected, a message about a call to unity. And, now the question is, how is that walked out? We'll go into the music now and talk a little bit more about this after Garth.
Garth Brooks is not accompanied by anybody else other than Garth Brooks, but he walks down the steps and he has a black face mask on, black hat, gray blazer, and stepping up to the microphone right now, live coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris here on News Talk 1110 WBT.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to see. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Country music superstar Garth Brooks performing at the inauguration and quickly shaking hands with the new president and new vice president and former vice president Mike Pence, and he's running up the stairs actually to he gave a hug to the Obamas as well. And we continue with our coverage here, guys, on News Talk 1110 WBT. Bo Thompson, Vince Coakley, Brett Winterble.
Hard not to be reminded of President Obama's singing that same song at the Mother Emanuel Church. A song that in our culture is as close to both poetry and prayer as you could possibly come. And we're going to finish with those two things. Let me introduce Amanda Gorman, our nation's first ever National Poet Laureate.
And now as we await the poet to approach the microphone here, she is waiting for them to adjust the microphone accordingly, and we'll hear from her now.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promise to glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it in its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Amanda Gorman sharing some poetry on this Inauguration Day, and now an opportunity to provide some final thoughts on our coverage this afternoon. You were asking a question earlier, Bo, just about the message delivered by Joe Biden. And, I think every president comes in talking about unity, and, they generally all say, we're here. I'm here to not only represent those who voted for me, but also those who did not vote for me. And I think there are going to be a lot of very skeptical people. And I think, I don't know where you are on this as well, Brett, but I think we're in an unprecedented time that I think this is probably going to be a harder sell for Joe Biden than probably any previous president based on the atmosphere that we have right now.
I agree with you on that one, Vince, 100%. Look, we've seen a transformation in the presidency, like it or not, in the last 4 years. It's running as a different operation. It ran as a different operation, and now we're going back to sort of more of an older school version of what the presidency looks like. The question is whether or not the American people are going to be up for that. Donald Trump's not a great orator, but he is certainly a powerful communicator. Joe Biden, not a great orator, but somebody who wanted to come across as willing to at least extend the hand to the 74 million that voted for Trump. And it remains to be seen what it is we're going to see. But let me just say, I thought that poem was absolutely spectacular. She did a terrific job. And something certainly tangible to hold on to, both the past and the future in front of us.
Amanda Gorman, who is America's first youth poet laureate there. And as we're speaking here, the benediction is going on there. This is about to wrap up. We're going to stay with you until about 12:35 and then join the Rush Limbaugh show in progress, obviously, today. But guys, as I was watching this and I was talking to the governor this morning, I wondered a couple of things. I wondered whether or not the name President Trump would come up in this speech. As far as I could tell, it did not. I also wondered how much of the speech would be focused on the pandemic. Not a lot by my listening as well. And how much, if at all, would he say or talk about what happened 1 week ago on Capitol Hill at that very location? He did make reference to it, but he did not dwell on it. In all, Vince and Brett, it was a very it was a speech in very generic terms. A lot of, into this uncivil war, rejecting a culture of manufactured facts. So pointing to certain things that may have been talked about over the last 4 years, but a very general speech in a time where there are a lot of very specific issues in the country that's dividing, the two parties and even people who aren't very political.
Yeah, what I found intriguing about this is I think as I listen to this, I'm thinking of this from the vantage point of understanding a party that has been doing these things for years. In terms of the Democrat Party, they have been, it's kind of interesting. Here he is talking about truth and the importance of truth. And we all know, and even in this campaign and things that we've watched in these last weeks of the campaign regarding his own son, there were things that were said that are simply not true. And it's really I don't know. I think I'm very concerned that, Donald Trump was in your face. Donald Trump was unpolished. He was brutal. He was savage. I'm very concerned now, but what we're going to have now is a season of gentle deception. And I think there are a lot of people out there who are going to see right through this. And I am very concerned about what an impact this is actually going to have.
Vince, you're a professional, you're an anchor, you're a person who has covered a lot of different stories. And the question I have for you is the role of the press moving forward here. I listened to your callers, the frustration apparent in their voice. You've got people calling saying they're ripping up their voter cards, these sorts of things like this. We saw phenomenons like QAnon, et cetera, take advantage of people in desperate times with desperate messaging. But will the press come back to that role that they play, or will they be half the time persecuting and prosecuting Trump and the other half of the time covering up for Biden? What's your sense out there as we look across the newsrooms in America?
I think what we've already seen is very much softball coverage. And I think this started before before we had the actual declaration of victory for Joe Biden, and it's continued. I mean, all the way to the point of, we have these wonderful stories now on Joe Biden's dog. It's really a comprehensive roll over and play dead. To use a dog analogy here, that's really what the mainstream news media is about ready to do. These are very friendly people, and I would dare say it's really roll over and play dead. It's probably not accurate, because I think it's going to be it's a continuation of advocacy. It's very unfortunate. And I think this is going to be a very maddening time for a lot of people.
You're listening to WBT, Bo Thompson, Vince Coakley, and Brett Winterble, coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden. We talked about what Biden said. We talked about the pose he is striking. I want to talk to you guys as we're leaving here, because I haven't had a chance to, the three of us, talk about what President Trump said leaving office this morning. And three things I want to pull away from here and get your thoughts on both of these. One quote was, "I will be watching, I will be listening." Another quote was, "I left it all on the field." And the final quote is, "We will be back in some form." Brett, I'll let you take it first.
The back in some form, remains to be seen what he's going to do. Is he going to start a social media platform? Is he going to do a TV network? Is he going to run again? I wonder, as he gets back into life at Mar-a-Lago, if that fire goes out a little bit about running again. You've done it. You took the shot. And this time around, to take him down, you had big tech, big Hollywood, big Wall Street, and big chicanery. So my guess is you're going to hear from him. I don't know how much of a factor he's going to be, but I think the key is going to be getting past the impeachment part of it, and then eventually you'll hear from him.
Yeah, and I think that's a significant part. There's got to be a focus on the impeachment part, and that the lawyers are going to be very busy working on this with the hope of being able to pull the plug entirely on this. We've had Alan Dershowitz on talking about this fact that, from his perspective, an impeachment after the president leaves office is something that's not even constitutional. So I think once that's out of the way, I think we'll see the emergence of whatever direction Donald Trump is going to go. And that could be a matter of a few weeks. Yeah.
We have about a minute to go. I want to shift the focus back over to the new president and vice president, Biden and Harris. Vince, as you look into your crystal ball here, or maybe I should phrase it this way, what's the first thing you're watching for as now the Biden administration is in effect as we speak?
Oh, wow. The first thing I'm looking for, I think, will be the clamor from the left for Joe Biden to go hard left straight out of the gate. I think that's what I'm going to be looking for. They're going to have very high expectations about very swift action.
And Brett, as I ask you the same question, I mean, obviously there are some measuring sticks here. Guatemala is right in the face of the president. Right. Impeachment is as well, and the pandemic.
Yep, he's got a group of advisors around him that are going to be important to him. And let me just say very quickly, I think he will utilize Vice President Harris as an emissary to some of the groups, the individuals, especially those on the left, who feel like they may be left behind.
This has been live coverage of the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on WBT. For Brett Winterble and Vince Coakley, I'm Bo Thompson. We now join the Rush Limbaugh Show, already in progress.
Right here it is, my friends, in my formerly nicotine